Okay, I am in South Dakota, and it's 5 in the morning on Friday, right? Hang on a second here. Got 10 miles to the gallon yesterday. Look at that, 10.1. That wasn't the full day. I reset it after getting the load because I wanted to get the deadhead out of there. So that was all 100% loaded. I'm pretty positive I had some decent headwind or tailwind on that. I don't think that the 10.1 would have been possible if I hadn't had some tailwind. But we'll see what happens today. I'm not expecting to get that heading west. I'm heading over to Tacoma. So this is that load of decking. Trex decking. It's not Trex, but it's, you know, it's the composite decking material. Pretty easy load, honestly, and it should be good fuel mileage too because it takes up the whole trailer, meaning the gaps behind the truck and the freight. The gap is fairly small, and also it's fairly low on the trailer. I only used 4-foot tarp, so you know, talking about. It's funny when I'm dispatching myself or even, you know, my other truck. I always, you know, most people always put a premium on loads that aren't tarped, and I guess it's hard for me not to look at a load that has no tarps and not put a premium on it. But I really put a premium on the loads that are 4-foot tarps. Because if you get a load that is not tarped, you're a little bit unaware of how tall the freight's going to be, unless the broker knows what the freight is. But so often, all they tell you is no tarps. Like, that's the only thing that matters. And I guess to a lot of people it is. But so with 4-foot tarps, at least you know it's only going to be 4 foot tall. So I really put a premium on 4-foot tarps because it dials in our freight a little bit better, and we know what it's going to be. And get the cruise set here. So anyway, this should be a pretty good fuel mileage truck. I wanted to give. Or a pretty good fuel mileage load. I wanted to give a update. So this is that new truck that I bought. It's just like my other one, so you guys might not see any difference because there virtually is no difference. It's a 2021 Kenworth T680. I chose the Paccar engine just like the other one. It's got the 264 rear end ratios, 264. It's got the 12-speed automated manual, and 228-inch wheelbase. Now that wheelbase is, I would say, pretty damn good for van. For flatbed, the wheelbase doesn't. We're not getting any. Really, we're not gaining any advantage in fuel mileage by going with the shorter wheelbase. In a van operation, typically speaking, the shorter wheelbase the better, because then you can close your gap up between the sleeper and the trailer a little bit, and get that aerodynamics under control. So you want to, if you're doing van or reefer, you want to be very, very critical on wheelbase. On flatbed, it's kind of the opposite. We almost would prefer a longer wheelbase so that we can haul longer freight and stick over the front of the trailer. In other words, we'd want a huge trailer gap just for our freight, and it's not going to, in most cases, the gap that it makes between our freight won't matter, because when we haul lumber, it's already 8 foot off the front of the trailer anyway. So if we have a 4 foot gap or go with a truck that was a fleet, a fleet spec and a non-flatbed fleet spec. Now, the other truck that I was really excited about buying was the Milton trucks. The Milton truck line, they run all flatbed. They run T680 Cascade or T680 Kenworths, and they also run some Peterbilts. The 579. And I was really wanting to buy one of those because it's the low top sleeper, which is ideal for flatbed. They come with headache racks. The reason I didn't was because they were priced a little too high. I think it was $67,000 for the Milton trucks, the only ones I could find, and they didn't have APUs or EPUs. They had nothing, meaning that engine had been idling a lot. I don't even think they had bunk heaters. I could be wrong about that, but the Wabasco or the what do you call that one? The S-bar heater, which allows the truck not to idle in the winter time, and then the truck would idle in the summer to run AC, so it kind of cuts down on half the idle time. But I don't even think they had those. I don't remember. Maybe they did. But I didn't even look at the ECM reports because I already knew the idle time was going to be insane, and I was going to need to, in my situation, I wasn't going to want to idle it, so I was going to have to put an APU on there. So not only did it cost more, but I would have had to spend about $12,000 to $15,000 to put an APU on there, and I couldn't cost justify that, even though it was an ideal spec for flatbed. So I chose a non-ideal spec because it has the APU, and I got it for $47,000. I bought this truck for $47,250, I think. And I bought it at 485,000 miles, I think, 483, something like that. It's got 494 now. So far, this truck's been a pretty good truck. I still need to add a fridge because this fleet I bought out of, they don't put fridges in from the factory, which is one really bad thing. The other thing about this fleet, they still put drum brakes on. I really wanted to get a disc brake truck, but price and the fact that I knew these trucks because I had already bought one of them back in, when was this? Let's see, it would have been 2023 when I bought the 2024, or see, because of my previous truck is a model year 2020 built in 2019. I want to say I bought that in 2023. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And then I owned it all the way through 2024, and then in 2025 I bought this one. So I bought this one older because this one was built in 2020. It's a 2021 model year, and I bought it in 2025. So this was a 5-year-old truck from the build date when I bought it. My other one was a 2019 build date, and I bought it in 2023, so a 4-year-old build date. So, and the first one I paid $63,000 for, and this one I paid $47,000 for. So, anyway, so far the truck review is going pretty well. There's a few things I need to do, like put the fridge in. I don't know if you can see it from this angle, but it's got an engine light on the dash. Now, I bought the OTR tool, so I know what that engine light is, and it's predictive cruise control. There's a fault in the predictive cruise control. Now, it seems a little ridiculous. Now, the cruise control's on right now. The cruise control's working fine. Now, I had them remove, I had the dealership when I bought it remove the cruise control, or sorry, disable the predictive cruise control on the ECM. And I'm wondering wondering if that has something to do with that engine light. There might be some, like they might have disabled the predictive cruise control but forgot to disable something else, and so now that light's on. I haven't addressed it because I plugged into it and I saw that it was the predictive cruise control causing the light, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to, stop trucking or, go and try to address this, because that's a pretty low level problem and I'm not going to look at it. Now, every once in a while, the wrench comes on, and that is referring to water in the fuel. And the longer it goes, I'm starting to change my assumption on this, but when we first got the truck back to the shop, that code came on, and there was another code that said something like DEF, the DEF pump pressure or something like that. And so, and my other truck had that problem, and what we did was we changed the DEF filter, because we assumed what was going on, or we hoped what was going on was that the pump couldn't get fluid because the filter was blocking the fluid. And when we changed it, that cleared up the problem on the other one. And so we did it again on this one, because it's kind of a maintenance thing anyway. You always want to change those filters. I don't even know if there's a recommended interval when you should change those DEF filters, but and there's two DEF filters. We only changed the easy one. There's one inside the tank, like on the pickup tube or whatever. It's like a sock, I guess. And we did not change that one because that one's pretty difficult to get at. And so anyway, we did change the DEF filter, and then we did an oil change right out of the gate, including the fuel filter, and thought that would take care of the water in the fuel problem. Well, that sensor keeps getting triggered, so I'm not. At first, I thought that maybe because this thing was parked at the dealership for several months, with practically no fuel in the tank. I mean, there was so little fuel in the tank that when I started the APU, it started and then ran out of fuel. That was how low the fuel tanks were. The APU couldn't even pull fuel up. We had to go put fuel in the tanks before we could even test the APU when I was buying the truck at the dealership, because they run them, and they claim they do that because they'll, the fuel gets siphoned out if they put any in. So maybe that one tank was higher and someone siphoned it out, and that's why anyway. So my thought process was that we probably got some water in the fuel tanks due to condensation over months of virtually no fuel in the tanks. And so I've been running some pretty heavy, treatments. I've been running the Hot Shot Diesel Extreme more often than I normally would, just to try to get all that out of there. And I feel like by now we shouldn't be having that problem. So now I'm trying to look at maybe that sensor that says there's water in the fuel, maybe it's faulty and maybe it's a little too sensitive right now. It doesn't really affect anything. The light just comes on once in a while and then goes right back off. So I don't know. We're gonna change. When I get back home, I'm probably gonna change the fuel filter again, get everything fresh, and see what happens. I might have to change that sensor. I don't even know where it's at. We'd have to, figure it out. But we might change that sensor that has to do with that picks that up, right? But anyway, other than those little tiny small problems. Now this is why, if you're buying a modern truck, you really need to have the OTR scan gauge. I think it's called OTR Diagnostics is the company name. So go to like otrdiagnostics.com or Google it. And pretty affordable, between $300 and $500 for the tool. And when you first purchase the tool, it comes with a year subscription, and then after that you have to pay for the subscription service. I want to say it's $600 a year. You know, I mean, it's one more cost, but it's not a huge cost. But being able to plug in when an engine light comes on and know what it is and make a decision whether, oh, that's no big deal, I'm going to keep driving it and get my freight delivered, or, oh, that's a big deal, I'm going to take it to the next dealership before I have to tow it. Or if it is in D-rate, you can clear codes and limp it to the dealership, so you don't have to tow it. Assuming that you can do that. I mean, depending on the code, it might be the code that's stopping it. In most emissions problems, it's going to be the code that's stopping it from driving, not a physical problem stopping it. If your driveline comes off, sorry, you're not going to limp it to the drive. Or if your radiator gets a hole in it and you dump all your coolant, you're not going to limp it by just deleting the codes. But a lot of the problems with these new trucks are due to the emissions, and it's all electrical stuff. So having a tool to be able to know what you're doing, know what you're dealing with, and be able to clear the code, it's going to come back. If it's an active code, it'll come back. But if you're in D-rate and you clear it, oftentimes you'll be able to clear it and it'll come back probably right away, but it won't go into D-rate right away. You might be able to drive all that day to get it to the dealership to where you can get it fixed. So in my opinion, having that OTR tool is an absolute must. And you can purchase them from Pittsburgh Power. Pittsburgh Power is a reseller of them. I got my last one for like, what was it, $3.99. They were on sale or something. Pretty good price. But anyway, this truck is performing fairly well, just like my other one, just like I would expect it. I have not yet done the DPF alternative cleaning. That's something that's on the list. I think I'm also going to run an overhead adjustment on the engine because I don't have any data of when that was done last. What else am I going to do? And then I'm going to do some fuel mileage things. I'm going to replace the DEF or the diff oil, the rear end oil, with the, let's see if I can remember the name, the XFE. I think it's called the XFE 75W85. It's a spicer oil that they've created, and it's built for fuel efficiency. I want to say it's 1.9% more fuel efficient than the other Eaton high fuel mileage oil, which is 1% better than the stock oil. So we're looking at about 2.9% better than a stock oil that probably is in there now. I very much doubt there's a fuel efficient oil in here coming out of the fleet, and probably the oil that's in the DEFs is probably the exact same oil that came in the factory. I'll bet you they never changed the DEF or that probably never changed the rear end oil. I can't imagine why a fleet would do that when they know they're trading them in at 400,000 miles, and that oil is rated to, I want to say, if it's not 500,000 miles, it's 750,000 miles. So there would have been no reason for the fleet to change that oil. So in my opinion, we will buy a new truck like this. That's kind of a no-brainer thing, We know we need to change the rear end oil anyway, just as a matter of maintenance. We may as well change it to the best fuel mileage oil that we can get. And it's more expensive. If you buy just a standard gear oil, it's much cheaper. But that 2.9% gain over the years that you own the truck, that's going to add up to, way more savings in fuel than you spend in the oil to put it in. So that's a no-brainer. Then I'm going to put air tabs on the tractor because I believe that does help. And then eventually I'm going to put some wheel covers on the tractor and probably my trailer as well. And once we do all those, we should see maybe 2 or 3 tenths, maybe 4 tenths per mile better than we're seeing now in fuel mileage. And so far, since I've been on the road with my flatbed, we're looking at, let me see if I can remember, I think we got a 8.8 miles per gallon fuel up, an 8.3, and yesterday's was 8.9. So we're clearly over 8. We're up into the high 8s. So if we get a few tenths more, we can be jumping up into 9, which is you know, pretty much what the other one can do if you drive it slow and you know, stay out of the west, which we're going to the west right now. But if you stay out of the west and you drive it slow, yeah, you know, my other one can do 9. I've done, you know, 30-day averages of 9.1, 9.2. I think my best was like, I don't remember, but I think I had something that was up in the 9.4 range for a 30-day average once. But that's best, and it normally settles in, you know, that other one normally settles in about 8.4 to 8.5, and you know, and that would be driving it, you know, 64 miles per hour, not 55. And you know, if we slow down and we care, then we can boost that fuel mileage number. But oftentimes we don't slow down and we don't care, and we just set the cruise at 64 and go, you know. And in that case, we normally come in about 8.4. So that's what I'm expecting this one can do. Since starting out this morning, we're at 7.9. That'll continue to tick up because we took there, it's at 8. So, but I'm driving slow today. I'm not in a hurry to get there. The roads are clear. I'm not clogging traffic up by doing 55. So here I am just putting along, right? 8.1 already. Look at that. So anyway, that's kind of an update on the truck. It's performing pretty well. Let's talk a little bit about you know, there's a lot of people that think that it might make sense to buy a brand new truck. And I have to be one of those people sometimes. I flirt with that idea too. You know, you look at all the things that we deal with. You know, even buying these modern trucks, 4 and 5-year-old trucks, you know, they're pretty solid. We're not changing very many parts on them, right? But I still would say, gosh, it would be nice to just go to the dealership and spec the truck the exact way we want it. Because that's the problem. I bought this truck and it's not the way I want it. I did not want the tall roof sleeper, right? You know, I would have chose a few things differently, put it that way. And so if we build a brand new truck from the factory, we can tell them, hey, no, we want the short roof sleeper because we're pulling flatbed, and you know, we can get the exact gear ratio that we want. I'm not sure if I would change much from the 264, depending on what our options were from the factory. I would like to try a 247, and then the idea would be to run in direct a lot, because right now I'm in direct. I'm in 11th gear, doing 55 at 1240 RPM. And that's where both trucks always settle in at best fuel mileage. Now, the reason it's best fuel mileage is because of the speed, not necessarily because of the RPM range. But if we bought a brand new truck and we put 247s in there, we could either drive 55 in direct and be down around 1100 RPM, which would be much more ideal than 1240. Or we could boost our speed, keep the 1240, and we could run, I'd have to do the math on it, but we could run somewhere close to 60, 62 in direct at this same RPM. So I think the 247 would be a fun gear to play with. The other gear that would be decent if we want to go a little faster in direct would be the 2.15. I have seen some Kenworths with that gear, but it's very rare. I think it was a test. They were probably doing probably had an exemption to do that. So I don't know if you're going to get the factory to put that gear in. You might request that gear and they laugh at you and say, nope, we ain't doing that. So you might be limited on your gear choice just based on what Kenworth or Peterbilt will allow. They may not allow that just because they've experienced it's not good. You end up taking out drive lines because you have so much torque on that drive line on the lower end gears. So I don't know. I feel like the 247 is allowed because I've seen more of those, and that might be a fun gear to try. Ultimately, the 264 has proven to be a solid gear. I wouldn't mind just matching that and just doing the 264. I would love to try the 18-speed Endurant transmission, the 18-speed automated manual. That's something that I would really, if I was building a brand new truck, I would consider doing that transmission, especially in the flatbed world where we get into, off-road situations a little bit more than vans would. Still, I wouldn't call myself, I would call the truck nothing but a highway princess still, but considering we're heavier more often, we have aerodynamic problems more often, it might be nice to be able to break the gears up with that 18 speed. Also, because of the 2 overdrive gears, we do have a little bit better breakup at high speed, so we could dial in our speed a little bit better. We'd have multiple speeds we could drive very, very efficiently because of the 2 overdrive gears. So I'd love to try that. I think ultimately the 12 speed is going to be more fuel efficient. And so if we were going for straight fuel efficiency, if I was building a truck for a dry van and we were going for straight fuel efficiency, I don't think I'd flirt around with the 18-speed Endurant because everything I've read, never once is fuel efficiency mentioned when they're talking about the 18-speed Endurant, but multiple times when you're talking about the 12-speed is fuel efficiency mentioned in the literature. So I don't know if the 18-speed would do poorly at fuel mileage. It doesn't seem like the engineers created it for a fuel efficiency thing. So whereas the 12-speed was absolutely a big part of its creation was fuel efficiency. So anyway, so I think about that sometimes. Could we buy a brand new truck and make money out here? If anybody knows, this is September of 2025 when I'm filming this, and freight rates are pretty horrible. I don't care what equipment type you're in. Flatbed is better. I mean, obviously dry van's the worst. Flatbed's better. Reefer's kind of in the middle, but the problem with reefer is there's so little freight available. Dry van, there's a ton of freight available, but none of it pays any profit. And flatbed, there's a ton of freight available, and very, very few loads pay profit. So we're in this market where it's tough. This isn't a video to talk about the market, but everybody knows if you're an owner or even looking at the prices, it's tough. We gotta thread the needle here on our costs. So I just can't justify a new truck when you look at that. You look at a $4,000 a month truck payment, or 38 or 37 or whatever it's going to be. That's going to be a hard needle to thread. Can we go from some maintenance cost to zero maintenance cost to offset the payment? Yeah, maybe, but we're not going to offset the full $3,700, $3,800, whatever the payment comes in at. Also, my bank would loan money for me to buy a brand new truck, but I'd have to come up with 25% down. Well, 25% down of $200,000 is $50,000. Now, a new Kenworth would probably come in around 175 to 185. But yeah, I mean, we're talking $40,000 down or more. So that's a lot we going to lose by not having $45,000 sitting in a CD? In other words, if we had $45,000 that we didn't need, that we can put down on a truck, that money could sit in a CD, that money could sit in the stock market, that money could sit somewhere where it's earning interest. So how much money are we going to not earn by putting $45,000 down on the new truck? Or said a different way, let's say you had the cash to put it all down on the brand new truck, and then you could really justify it saying, oh look, well now we don't have a truck payment, now we've lowered our maintenance costs because we have warranties, and new trucks should not break down. That's the theory. That theory doesn't always come true, but that's the theory. And we've paid for it cash, so we don't have truck payment. Well, as far as the business is concerned, I'd say, yeah, that would absolutely be worth it. I would say, yeah, that's threading the needle. You could do that. However, if you had $185,000 in the S&P 500, so that's the, what do we call that? That's the opportunity loss. So it's not exactly free. Because if we give up the $185,000 to buy the brand new truck, and now we don't have as big a maintenance bill, which we might lower our maintenance bill by 15 to 20 cents per mile by not having, by having warranties and not having breakdowns and all that, might, right? I mean, that's a big unknown. It's not guaranteed. So 25 cents, so let's say it's 20 cents a mile just for easy numbers, and let's say for easy numbers you drive 10,000 miles per month. That's 20 cents, or see, that's $2,000 a month that you've saved by putting the $185,000 on your truck. But how much money did you lose by not having it in the S&P 500, right? Per month. I mean, it might work out. I haven't done the math. Someone might have to do this and put something in the comments. Hey, it works out. It's probably better. It might be better because the 20 cent per mile savings per month might add up faster than your interest would add up having money in the S&P. But what's the spread, right? It's not going to be a full savings. That's kind of my point. So we always have to think about that. It's not always a no-brainer when we're buying a brand new truck, put it that way. So I've kind of deemed in my business that it just is not going to make sense to buy brand new. Maybe there's a point when my business gets large enough where I'm sick of buying trucks that aren't quite what I want, and it starts to make sense to buy brand new, and I can make that I can start to thread the needle on costs. And the nice thing about buying the brand new truck is it's much more predictable, because we get to build what we want to build. We get to build the truck we want. We don't have to take what we get and make it work. That's what we do when we buy a fleet truck. We take what we get. We get what we get. We don't bitch, right? And we know it's less than ideal in some cases. But at this point in the game, I'm saying that I just can't justify in my business buying a brand new truck. And I would have to say that in most people's businesses, it's going to be very hard to cost justify a brand new truck. I think that's just going to be, the thing. When you can buy a $47,000 truck, in this truck's case, and you can go haul the same freight, and you can go get 8.8 miles to the gallon like we're getting right now on the dash, and like I said, the last 3 fuel ups are clearly over 8. I'm not seeing the advantage to, okay, so are we going to go from 8.5 to 9 if we buy the brand new truck because we get the updated aero package? Because this is not the next gen Kenworth, and there was a 5% gain in fuel mileage because of the update in the front end stuff when they did the next gen. Which, if I would have went up one more year, well, in 2022 it was kind of a half year. Half the trucks had the update, half of them didn't. So I'm kind of right on that verge, and I really wanted to buy the next gen, but again, it was a cost thing, and I knew that I was going to get 5% better fuel mileage. But even knowing that it was a cost thing, you just can't cost justify that. So I just think that's the case right now. We have some really, really good options in the 5 and 4 year old trucks for really, really good prices. When you look at that, the brand new truck starts to not look so hot. It's not that the brand new truck doesn't still look good, it does. It's just that the used trucks are looking so much better. So that's kind of my take on buy brand new or buy used. I think right now the bargain is in the used truck market, the 4 and 5 year old trucks. Buy them with APUs. I prefer the diesel APUs. Buy them with diesel APUs, and buy them with the. If you're buying the Kenworth or the Peterbilt, buy them with the 264 or the 279 gear. Buy them with the 12-speed automated manual. It's the most common transmission you're going to find in 4 and 5 year old trucks anyway. And buy them, if you're in the dry van operation, you need to buy them with the shortest wheelbase you can get. So the 228 in the Kenworth and the 236 in the Peterbilt. And you can go with whatever engine you want, the Cummins or the Paccar. The Cummins has a lot of advantages over the Paccar. It's more powerful, has more torque. You can work on it easier than the Paccar. But the one disadvantage that I don't think we can ignore is that we will always get better fuel mileage in the Paccar. As much as people hate the Paccar, and I've learned to love it, all the hate that the Paccar gets, I don't think is it was justified in the early days. They did have some problems. They also developed the engine right when emissions was a major problem in every brand, and so they got a lot of heat over that because they were the new kid on the block and they had the same problems as everybody else. And they didn't go into it with a good reputation because they started in that bad market. So some of the bad rep was not exactly justified, and some of it was. But the newer Paccars, the 2019, EPA 2019 and EPA 2021, those are solid engines. I would not stray away from those engines. They are solid. They have some problems you need to look into. The EPA 2019, I already know that it has a cam problem. So it's very common that the cam will fail at somewhere around 500,000 miles. Both my trucks that I bought had new cams replaced before I bought them under warranty. So if you're going to buy the 2019 EPA, which this truck would be an EPA 2019 engine, make sure that you have documentation that the cam was replaced under warranty. Because it's a very common failure and it's a very expensive repair. We're talking, let's see, we're talking about $9,000 to $10,000 to just replace the cam. This would be paying $260 per hour for labor. This would be at the dealership level. So if you had a local mechanic that could do it, they could save you a lot of money. However, getting it done at the dealership with a warranty might make sense. I don't know. Let's just talk about dealer numbers. So, but when you do the whole repair, you have to replace. You have to pull the transmission because they pull it out through the back, which I still don't understand why they do that. But apparently that's how they do it. They got to remove the clutch, and because I priced this out because I was looking at buying a Kenworth that had a bad cam. for super cheap. And I'm thinking, okay, I can just purchase that, take it to the dealership, and have them do it. Well, it didn't work out because the price was so high to replace the cam. But they recommended changing the clutch, because you have to pull the clutch out anyway, so there's no more labor to put a brand new clutch in. And I agree with that. At 500,000 miles, let's put a new clutch in. So the price I got after doing everything with the dealership, doing it, was like $16,000. So you could probably do it for under 10, even with the clutch, if you took it to a non-dealership mechanic. But either way, it's a huge expense. So if you're going to buy the 2019 engine, I think you almost have to make sure that it had the cam replaced already, or make sure that you buy it with a warranty that covers the cam. Because it's a very good possibility you'll be changing the cam. When it comes to the EPA 2021, they fixed a lot of problems, and it's a very solid engine. They did have problems with the injectors. From what I understand, that problem is resolved. They've developed a new injector. I think it's still a problem though, because they haven't recalled it or anything, so a lot of your trucks still have the original injectors in them. As they go out, the dealership under warranty will replace it with the new injector, but they don't just replace all 6, from what my understanding. So the injector was an issue. I think it's not a very big issue, meaning it's not like all of them fail. And I think running the fuel mileage, or the max mileage catalyst from Pittsburgh Power, running their Flashpoint, or running a hot shot EDT, running those fuel treatments seem to be the fix. Everybody that runs those fuel treatments do not have injector problems. So I don't really put much stock in that problem, because, and originally Paccar's fix for it, before they developed a new injector, was to sorry, I'm yelling because it's getting louder here around the jigs. Originally their fix for it was to run a fuel lubricity. I think they recommended the Power Service gray bottle. It boosts the cetane and has a lubricity additive, which is basically, I mean, if you're going to run that, I would prefer to run EDT on hot shot side. It's a much better additive of the same thing. And then the Flashpoint that Pittsburgh Power sells is their version of the same thing. So any one of those would be fine if you're going to run it. So that was Paccar's fix for it, until they eventually come out with the new injector. And then before they replace the injector, they run a flush, an injector cleaner flush through the fuel system, which is basically Power Services version of the Hot Shot Diesel Extreme. And I run Hot Shot Diesel Extreme at least once a month through the system. So I feel like I could buy the EPA 2021 with the injector problem, with the bad injectors, and never have an injector failure because of the fuel treatment that I'm automatically running. So I don't feel like that's a problem that would be a problem if you're going to run the right fuel treatment. So anyway, coming back to weaving back into what I was saying, either engine, the Cummins, and I don't know the Cummins, that the Cummins might have its own set of problems, right? But either engine you prefer, the Cummins or the Paccar, with whichever gear you want, the 279 or the 264, and the 12-speed automated manual with the right wheelbase so that you can close the gap up if you have a van. I think both of those setups are capable of high nines in the fuel mileage game when we're talking about van operations. I think whether you have the Cummins, whether you have the Paccar, you could still get into the nines. Now, I think the Paccar is going to be in the high nines, probably touching 10. I know the Paccar can touch 10. I did it with a dry van. For 2 months straight, I averaged 10 miles to the gallon with a dry van. This was like 14,000 miles over a 2-month period. My average was 10.01. So I know it's possible with the Paccar. I think the Cummins is going to drop you out of the 10s. I think it's going to drop you into the low 9s, 9.2, 9.3. Still very, very profitable, right? I mean, if you get 9 miles to the gallon with a Cummins pulling dry van, 9 miles to the gallon to 10 doesn't save that many cents per mile. So I think either one of those specs would be a fantastic truck for either flatbed, reefer, or dry van. So that's my take on the used truck. That's kind of the update with the two T680s that I own with Paccars in them. Been good trucks, honestly. I have not had, like I said, good enough that I went and bought another one, right? So I would not believe the hype about, oh, the Paccar is a shitty engine. Yeah, it got its reputation, honestly. But it's fixed, I guess I can say. I've had good luck with it. So that's my take on it. Let me know in the comments, guys, if you have a different take on it. I'm really curious to know if anybody is running a brand new truck, purchased it out of the factory, what you purchased it for, what your payments are, and do you think you can be profitable, or do you think, someone that's done that, and I'd love to hear a comment on it and say, I did it, I really recommend it, or I did it, I wouldn't recommend it, however you feel about it. So anyway, let me know in the comments, guys. Appreciate it.